So your spouse comes to you and tells you that they're struggling. And instead of hearing it, instead of pulling them close, you tell them that you're also struggling, maybe even more. And just like that, you're both in this race, like a race to see who has the bigger problems, who's the bigger victim, who's struggling the most. Because whoever loses has to hear the other one's pain first. And nobody wants to lose, right? There's a name for this pattern, right? It's part of the drama triangle. And once you can see it in your own marriage, it's really hard to unsee it. And it really teaches you how to do things differently in order to improve your connection. In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to show you the 3 roles of the drama triangle and how you and your spouse trap each other in them without even knowing it. And how one of you can step out, even if the other one decides to keep playing in the triangle. Right? A few years back, my wife, Kate, remember her coming to me and saying, Eric, we haven't been connecting and I miss you. Something like that. And instead of receiving that, right? Instead of saying, yeah, I miss you too. My response was, yeah, I'm overwhelmed. Okay. I've got way too much going on. I can't even think about that right now. She reached out from pain. My response was to answer with bigger pain. And in 30 seconds, we'd both disappeared into the same corner of the triangle. Right? Both of us running the same steps in the same race, moving to the victim stance. And the move most couples don't even see, right? One spouse says, I'm hurting. The other one says, yeah, I'm hurting more. And you spend the next 3 hours arguing about whose pain matters the most. When all either of you actually needed was to be held, was to be reaffirmed, was to be loved. I've worked with hundreds of couples, and some version of this race is running in almost every single one. Most of them have no idea it's even happening, right? So here's the 3 rules in the drama triangle, right? There's the victim, which is like, this is happening to me. I can't do anything. There's the villain, which is, this is your fault. You need to change. And there's the hero, which is, I'll fix it. I got this. Don't worry, right? Victim, villain, and hero. Those are 3 corners of the same triangle. And here's the part almost nobody ever teaches or talks about, right? You actually don't need the other person's permission to put them in the triangle. You can actually just drag your spouse into a corner. They never even asked to stand in. Without them ever even knowing that they're in it, you just put them there in your story. Now, before I tell you what corner you're probably standing in, you should probably know something, right? Every corner of this triangle feels good in its own way. And that's why we just keep going back to it. Right? Feeling like a victim is almost like a warm blanket for some people. It's good to feel like it's not your fault that you're stuck. Right? Because if nothing's your fault, well, then nothing's your responsibility. Being the villain feels powerful, right? Because when you're attacking, when you're not feeling the pain underneath, you're able to avoid that. And the hero feels needed because when you're someone saving someone, you don't have to ask yourself what you actually need. You're just all about overfunctioning and taking care of the others. So every part of the triangle is about avoiding something, which is most likely why you're going to resist what I'm about to show you, right? But I think it's important to show you anyways. I remember last year, Kate, my wife and I, we were in a pretty busy stretch of our lives, right? Every night of the week, she was somewhere. She was teaching yoga. She was doing certifications. She was out with friends. She was working late. She's not a full-time career being a teacher. I was home with the kids, right? I was supporting her. I was doing dishes. I was doing bath time. I was doing bedtime. And I was alone without a spouse. And I noticed something happening in me, probably like midweek of these weeks that were tough for me. I was starting to build this case, right? In my head, I was like collecting evidence. Kate cares about her work way too much. This is unhealthy. Kate cares about her yoga, and that shouldn't be a priority. Why is Kate spending all her time with her friends? She has a husband and kids at home, right? It's not fair that she gets to do all this stuff, and I'm here holding the family together. Sure, you've experienced that too. I remember I was standing in the kitchen one night. It was pretty late. She wasn't even home yet. It was like 10 o'clock. I was building those courtroom arguments against my wife. Who was I going to give her a piece of what I thought? Here's the thing. Kate had no idea any of this was happening. She was out with her friends. She was living her life. But in my mind, she was my villain and I was her victim. I had put her on trial without even telling her about it. And that's the first move in the drama triangle, right? You don't need the other person to actually do anything. You just need to decide in your head that they are the problem. And once you've done that, boom, you're in the drama triangle. Now, if you ever spent an hour mentally rehearsing a fight with your spouse before they even got home, what you're going to say, how they're going to respond, how you're going to respond to that, you've done this, right? If you've ever gone to a whole day just collecting examples, building up that resentment of how they've wronged you and all the ways they've wronged you, you've been in the triangle, right? If you weren't being unreasonable, right? But you were standing in the victim corner of the triangle, putting them in the villain space, right? Here's one that I'm even less proud of. I remember there was a time in our marriage that every time I'd visit my in-laws, visit Kate's family, she'd come home a little bit off, right? She was quiet, a little pulled in. I remember watching that happen for years. And then one day I decided, I'm going to fix this for her, right? I'm going to help her see what I see. That's something about this dynamic that it was weighing on her, right? That she had permission to figure out what she wanted. And so I sat her down for that conversation. I told her what I'd noticed. I explained my theory. I was super analytical with everything. I offered my solutions. And it went about as well as you'd think it would. It didn't go well. Here's what I didn't understand at the time, right? Kate wasn't asking to be saved. Her relationship with her family is hers, right? Her feelings about them are hers. The work of figuring that out, if she wants to, is hers. And me, because I was uncomfortable watching what I assumed was her being uncomfortable, decided to take all that from her. I decided to save her and just give her the solution to the problem that I imagined she was facing, right? That's hero mode. And most men, right, especially who hang out here, they think they're being loving. They're not. It's actually pretty invasive, right? Here's the line I want you to remember. Be a hero, you need a victim. And your spouse doesn't want to be one. But you'll make them one anyways, just so you can be the hero, right? Because you need them to be the victim. Otherwise, they don't need to be saved. And every husband who's ever sat down with his wife and said, hey, I'm going to help you figure this out, when she's never asked for help, has done this. Every father who's tried to solve his kids' problems instead of letting them solve it on their own has done this. Every friend who swooped in, uninvited, giving unsolicited advice has done this. And honestly, you think you're being generous, right? For me too. I thought I'm doing a great job. I'm a great husband. But putting somebody else in the victim corner is really just your own way of justifying trying to be the hero. Right? I remember even more recently, I was on the phone with my youngest sister. And she was telling me about some friendship stuff that was going on in her life, right? She was struggling to make new friends in this new town, and she was feeling quite lonely. She was feeling stuck, right? She wasn't really sure what to do. And I could feel it happen in my body, right? Oh man, I got your answer here. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to tell her exactly what she needs to do. I'm going to pull her out of this. I was about to do it. I was like mid-breath, right? And then I caught the second thing, right? Underneath the hero, I was actually already pretty annoyed at her, right? Because some part of me knew or believed she wasn't going to take my advice. And I was already building a case against her for it, right? If she doesn't listen to me, well, she deserves to stay stuck. This is her responsibility. She needs to do something different if she wants to feel different, right? That's kind of the move nobody talks about. The hero who doesn't get to save somebody else becomes the villain. The rescuer who gets rejected turns on the person they're trying to rescue. If you've ever tried to help your spouse with something and gotten furious when they didn't take your advice, right? That's the move. you start to get angry at your partner for not taking your advice and changing. If you've ever coached your kid, right, through a problem, and then because they didn't follow through or they just totally ignored you, you start to get angry or snap at them. This is the move. If you've ever offered advice to somebody unsolicited that they didn't ask for and then felt disrespected when they didn't take it or told you that, hey, that's not welcome, no thanks. That's the move, right? It's not love. It's like you're trying to control a situation and you're dressing it up as help. And when the control doesn't work, well, we feel disrespected. We feel attacked by the other person. Now, most of us have a home base in this drama triangle, right? A corner that we default to when things get really hard. Sure, we visit other corners, right? So for me, sometimes I'm the hero, villain, sometimes I'm the victim, but I typically live in one. And here's how you can kind of find yours, right? If under stress, you're saying, hey, this isn't fair, well, you're probably leaning towards the victim position. If under stress, your first move is, you know what, they need to change. They need to do something different. Well, then you're most likely in the villain space. And then if under stress, your first move is, I got this, I'll handle it, I'll take that on. Well, then usually you defer to the hero, right? For me, I often go from hero to villain to victim, right? I tend to avoid the victim space because of what I experienced growing up, right? I experienced my mom living in that victim space, and I promised myself that I never would do that. So I jump into the hero, right? And when I can't save the people I love, or when they won't let me, or when they don't take my advice, I start moving towards the villain space, right? That's kind of my triangle. So, what's yours? Sit with it for a second. Don't rush past it. Think about your behavior because you actually can't step out of your corner if you're not aware of it, if you can't name it. And here's another quick note, right, before we pivot. If you just identified your corner and that landed somewhere in your body, right? I built something called the connection blueprint that walks you through the first 3 moves you can make once you see the pattern. Okay, it's totally free. The link is in the description. It's my gift to you. You can grab it. Okay, so let's talk about how you get out of the triangle, right? Because here's the good news. Every corner of this triangle has a healthy opposite version so that you can be more relational, right? A move that gives you what the corner was trying to give you without trapping you and your spouse into this race, right? The victim tends to flip to the creator, the hero flips to the cheerleader, and the villain flips to the truth teller. Here's the other part that nobody really talks about, right? Only one of you has to learn to flip in the beginning. Because the moment one person steps out of their corner, the triangle starts to collapse, right? Your spouse can't be your villain if you refuse to be their victim. They can't be your victim if you refuse to be the hero. The dance only works when both of you do the old steps and you decide to put your partner there. I remember years ago when my kids were little, I was working brutal hours. I was like in the service industry. I remember my wife, Kate, she was raising 2 kids. She was overwhelmed, right? The kids were young. She was trying to hold her own life together, right? She was still trying to make her career work. And I remember she said to me, Eric, you're never here. And I can't do this alone. I remember my response almost every time was, Kate, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Look at everything I'm already doing. I'm sleeping 3 hours a night. I'm drowning at work. I'm trying to provide for this family. Right? She was saying, I'm struggling. And I was saying, I'm struggling more. Both of us in the victim corner, right? Racing to the bottom. And one day I really decided to get honest with myself about something. I had been telling myself I had no choice about the hours that I worked, that the job required it, that this was just what fathers in my position did. None of that was true. I had choices. I just didn't want to make them because making them would mean risking something. So I remember walking into my boss's office. I really told him, hey, I'm not staying past midnight anymore. Honestly, I don't care what he's doing. I need to be up at 6 a.m. with my kids, spending time with them. And if that means that you need to fire me, I get it. You can fire me. He didn't fire me. I got my evenings back, slowly started to get my relationship back. And I stopped being a victim of the situation I had. Right? The whole time I was choosing to be a victim of my situation. And that's the creator move, right? A victim says, I can't because, and a creator says, I won't because. Same facts, completely different relationship to them. You own the choices, and you have to understand that you always have choices. You might not like them, right? But the choices you're making have real costs. You need to accept that even avoiding a choice is a choice. And the moment that you start making that small choice, right? Just one small thing, the drama triangle starts to dissolve, right? Because the creator doesn't live in the triangle. There's no one to blame, right? Now, the hero move is often the hardest to give up because the hero move, especially for men, it feels like love, right? So here's a test, right? When your spouse is struggling, can you just be with them or do you need to fix them, right? A cheerleader sits next to a person. A hero stands over them, right? So this happened just recently, a couple of days ago. Kate was having a hard week, right? She wasn't sleeping well. She was stressed, the whole thing, right? And the old me would have just jumped right into problem solving, right? I would suggest podcasts. I would rearrange my calendar to support her. I would make sure that she knew exactly what she needed to do. But the new me just sat next to her. And I said, hey, that sounds really hard. How can I help? And her response said, there's nothing you can do, Eric. Just stay with me. And so I stayed. That's the cheerleader move, right? Because I believe in my wife's ability to handle her own life. So I don't need to take the work from them, right? I don't need to hand her the solution. I'm just with them. I'm not above them, right? They don't need saving. I actually just trust them to figure it out. Because honestly, they've been figuring out things since way before she met me, right? Now, the cheerleader doesn't need the rescue. The cheerleader just witnesses. And that honestly turns out to be what most people that we love actually need from us. Now, this third flip is the one that people get wrong the most, right? Because on the surface, the villain and the truth teller sound kind of similar, right? Both of them say hard things. I've seen well, I'm just being honest. I'm just telling them the truth, right? So in both of these instances, you name what's not working, but there's a difference. The villain speaks truth to punish and create change. The truth teller speaks truth to connect. Right? A villain says, you never listen to me, you're selfish, this is why I always have problems. But a truth teller says, I'm hurt. I feel like I don't matter to you when this happens. I want to be closer to you than we are right now. Same facts, same frustration, same marriage. But one is aimed at making your spouse smaller and trying to coerce them into changing. The other is making the space between you more honest. Now, here's the test that I used to use on myself, right? Before I say the hard thing, I ask, do I want them to feel bad or do I want us to be closer together? And if the answer is, I want them to feel bad, I'm about to be the villain. If the answer is, I want us to be closer, I'm about to be the truth teller. And this took some radical honesty on my part, right? Because it's easy to say that I was always trying to create connection, when in reality, there was a part of me who was resentful, who was contemptuous, and who wanted to create pain because I was in pain, right? So the next time you and your spouse are having a hard conversation, before you respond, just think about, hey, am I putting myself into any of these parts? Which corner did I step into? The victim, villain, or the hero, right? You don't have to go deeper than that. Just start to notice where you're leaning towards. And once you can name it, you have a choice that you didn't have before. You get to decide to do a different move, right? So I'd love to hear from you. Right before we wrap up here, drop in the comments. Let me know. You typically lean towards the villain, through the hero, to the victim, right? And again, these are adaptations. It's things that we learn in order to protect ourselves. So, which corner is your home base? No judgment here, right? I read every single one. And if you watch this whole video and you realize you and your spouse have been running this drama triangle for years and you want to have a real conversation about what it's going to take to stop it, there's a link below in the description. You can book a map call on my calendar, a marriage action plan call, which is just a conversation that we can have together about what's going on for you and whether or not I can help. So I hope this was helpful to you now. Think about where you put yourself in the drama triangle, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.